What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Marcus, and today I'm finally getting around to sharing my impressions on the Avancus Apex 1.5s. I recently shared my impressions with the TYR DZ-1 Trainers, and there are similarities between that shoe and the Apex 1.5s here. However, I think there are more differences between the two that I think will likely appeal to two different camps. I happen to like both in different ways, and I'm going to do my best to not only cover the basics, but to also share my impression of these Apex 1.5s and share who I think they'll best work for. Now let's start with the construction of the shoe. This is a drop zero design shoe, meaning there is zero heel to toe drop in the sole. In addition, the sole is only 4mm thick between the 2mm sole and the 2mm lug, so you get the benefits of better contact and feedback from the ground through the thin sole, so there is no energy loss, as well as gaining improved balance on a firmer foundation. These trainers are constructed more like a typical sneaker, similar to the Vivo Primus Lights, rather than in the style of a slipper, such as the Notorious or the newer tiers, which use a sock-like structure. These uppers are constructed of a 3D jacquard knit fabric, which has a tight weave and feels like a 2-ply or multi-layered fabric. It is noticeably thicker than the tiers. As such, they are not as breathable as some other trainers, and your foot can still get sweaty even though the fabric is breathable. Honestly, I don't think that will be much of an issue for typical training sessions, but more so for longer periods of use when used outside of training. The heels of the shoe is constructed from a cushioned denim and reinforced with the heel counter support, or TPU type, and they do a great job of keeping the heel secure in the shoe and preventing unwanted movement. There is some additional TPU type support built in over the fabric around the laces and the toe as well. Between the reinforced TPU toe cap and heel counter, as well as the extended sidewalls, they really help prevent lateral movement. The last part of the shoe is the sole, with its grippy pattern made up of the Avancus symbol and pronounced angled edges. Other types of barefoot shoes or deadlift slippers typically use a sole like the Tolo's Primus Lights, and they may have a slight propensity to roll from side to side, especially with sumo lifters. Models like these Avancus are built with more structure to the sole for better lateral stability. These Apex 1.5s, like the previous version, are great in this regard. In fact, when I opened the box and held them for the first time, it was one of the first things I noticed. The transition from the flat sole to the lateral wall is somewhat sharp and well defined, as opposed to being a sole that simply wraps around the side. In most areas around the sole, it looks like a 90-degree transition, and comparing this to the TYR DZ-1 Trainers, you can easily see the difference in the angle. I think this makes for better lateral stability with respect to two of the big lifts. Now let's talk about appearance and colors. Appearance is obviously subjective, but I find the overall design attractive. The Avancus Apex 1.5s come in 3 colors at the moment: a truly bright white on white, white with a purple sole, and these red with black sole Jamal Browner versions. As soon as I saw Jamal's post on Instagram, I knew I had to have them. I will note that the red is more of a neon red and is quite bright. In video, it may blend in well with the rest of the red in my gym, but it is clearly a different and brighter shade. I'm not exactly sure why I'm drawn to this red and black color scheme. Funny thing is, as much as I like this colorway, there is one thing that often comes to mind when looking down at my feet while wearing them. Between the color and the wide toe box, they sometimes remind me of clown shoes. The style of these trainers should preclude anyone from thinking these resemble deadlift or water slippers, and therefore may be more appealing for wearing outside of training. Now let's talk about feel and comfort. Again, these are designed with a wide toe box, which ensures a natural and optimal spread of the foot, so they are rather comfortable. The toe box on the Apex 1.5s is wider than that on the TYR trainers, so they are even roomier up front than the tiers. This is important to note because they will feel great on those of us with really wide feet, but may feel too large and roomy if you have narrow feet, and that may be a bit off-putting, so keep that in mind if considering these. I happen to have a very wide foot, and I found these trainers to be extremely comfortable, more so than the tiers. These were more comfortable than the tiers from the jump, and with the exception of the weight, they still are. That's likely due to the more generous toe box and the fact that I keep the insoles inside. I've worn them around the house for long periods of time, and even a quick run to the store, and I'm quite happy with the comfort. So much so that I'm planning to get the white on white as a summer sneaker to wear out and about. They have a grippy sole that provides good traction while allowing a good sense of the ground beneath you. In fact, I've worn these to warm up on my Peloton, and I can clearly feel the pedal through the sole of these shoes. Once again, I'll show the slide test down the back of my bench at a 45-degree angle to demonstrate they are quite grippy and match that of the TYR's grippy sole, both in test and in actual use. I mentioned that the tiers were almost unnoticeable while wearing due to the lightweight and comfortable fabric, and although these are not clunky, they aren't as lightweight as the tiers either. These weigh 345 grams per shoe in my size 11, which are 86 grams more per shoe than the TYR trainers. I think these are great for the lifting crowd, and these work well with quick lateral changes due to the sharply defined lateral soles. But I won't speculate on how these could work for CrossFit or other types of training. For powerlifting and bodybuilding style training, these work great. You won't notice the weight on your feet while training, but you won't forget you're wearing them either. The thicker fabric and heavier weight likely make that difference. Now let's talk about the performance when it comes to training. Training in these, I can feel the floor with ease due to the thin rubber outsole, and yet they're really quite comfortable on your feet and walking around in. While benching, they provide great grip for leg drive and also provide great grip for other exercises where the feet come into contact with the ground. I have not experienced any foot slippage, and the shoes help the feet feel planted and secure at all times. The Drop Zero design allows for a nice rooted connection with the surface. I would say that they're also comfortable with some light running in the context of warm-ups on a treadmill or some sprint drills for cardio. They should work fine. Again, I prefer the Velcro overlaces on my trainers for ease of getting off and on, but that's a subjective factor as well. Now let's talk about pricing. The price of the Avancus Apex 1.5s cost a very reasonable $99. And this is a great price point, especially for training shoes. And if you're only going to use them for training, they should last a long time, and that reasonable expense will go a long way. These are at the lower end of the spectrum for current offerings, such as Tolo's Archetype 2.0s at $120, the Vivo Primer Slide 3s at $130 to $160, and the Tiers at $150 to $160. So now I want to talk about some pros and cons. First and foremost, for me, is the grounding and comfort as a pro. My feet and foot position feel comfortable and planted at all times. They can be worn with or without the insoles, or with or without socks, and still feel comfortable. They offer fantastic grip in any lift. The flat sole from side to side, defined by a 90-degree lateral wall, make them feel rock solid and stable for deadlifts, and should do so for sumo pullers as well. It's no surprise that Avancus tapped one of the best deadlifters in the world to help promote this model by creating a unique colorway for Jamal Browner. Now let me mention the only thing I think is a con, or the only thing I would change about the design of this shoe, and that would be with reference to the tongue, as I wish it were more of my preferred booty style. The tongue does have the typical anchor loop for the laces and some elastic webbing on either side so it stays in place laterally, but you sometimes have to hold it up with your thumb or nudge it up with your toes when you're putting them on. The tongue is flat and never feels uncomfortable against the instep. I wish they offered these with the Velcro strap system, but I realize some will gravitate towards laces and others towards straps. But getting my Tiers on is much simpler and quicker than these due to the straps of the Tiers. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on these. For those of you who own a pair, what are your thoughts on the design, grip, comfort, and price? For those of you who are contemplating a pair, let me know if you feel my impressions have been helpful. Anyway, that's all I have for my impressions on these shoes. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.